turns we were taking. I think about all the time that we wasted, but here I am every night still chasing the memories we didn't know we were making. We didn't know, we didn't know, we didn't know.
Finally, country music all of a sudden pops off and everyone wants to come move to Nashville, and we're like, wait, we've been here for a year now. Someone's like, grandma's dying in the song, and I'm crying in the corner, and
not the club banger.
No, and my boss is like, no. Police publishing is a very, very relationship business, and so just maintaining those relationships both on the business side, but then as a writer on the creative side as well, are extremely important. And my professor was like, I think you should be a publisher. And I was like, no. If these 3 people who got in a room today and wrote a song because you scheduled it and they created something that is now gonna live forever, is gonna impact people's lives, and people are gonna listen to it and feel some type of way, and like you orchestrated that, that's like the best feeling in the world.
We are so excited to have Kirby Mathews today. Kirby Mathews is the Senior Director of Publishing and A&R at Riser House Entertainment, where she has been leading publishing and artist development efforts based in Nashville. She currently oversees a team focused on identifying, signing, and developing songwriting talent while managing the A&R strategy at Riser House. Prior to Riser House, Kirby also worked as creative director at Winsong's Music Publishing, and also at Play It Again Music Publishing, supporting some of Nashville's biggest songwriters with song pitching and catalog management. Thank you for being here, Kirby.
That was a perfect spiel. You killed it. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be a part of this. This is great.
Awesome. Well, you kind of are across 2 separate areas in the music industry, both publishing and A&R. So I think you're an awesome person to talk to about both of those somewhat elusive roles to many people. And so can you say a little bit about what does your day-to-day look like as leading both publishing and A&R at Riser House?
Yeah, so for sure. As Meredith mentioned, I'm the Senior Director of Publishing and A&R here at Riser House. At Riser House, we are a full-service record label as well as a full-service publishing company. So I do get the best of both worlds, being able to see both sides of the business, both managing my songwriters on the publishing side and then working with our artists and all the songs they're releasing, release strategy, as you mentioned before, on the label side. Normally, what my day-to-day looks like is very dependent on if our artists are in recording cycles, because that, on the A&R perspective, is when you're the busiest. So if you want me to elaborate a little bit about that, it's essentially when the artists who are signed to the label side of Riser House are considering putting out music, and then we would be going into the studio to record those within, let's say, the next month or so, month to 6 month span. That's when the A&R job gets the busiest. Thankfully, I have someone under me who handles all of the administration for that, which collecting label copy and credits and everything else for everyone involved on the record. That's also a huge side of A&R, which people don't realize. It's a lot of like admin focused work. Fortunately, I get to be on the creative part, which means listening to pitches. So publishers will send us songs, I'll listen, and then if we like it enough, we'll play it for the artist, and maybe they would want to record it or cut it, which would mean it would make the record. And then also mainly release strategy, which is getting with the radio team and deciding what songs should maybe be the radio single, or getting with our DSP team and deciding what song should be the focus track. That's mainly what happens on the A&R side, but I will say majority day to day, I'm focused on the publishing side. So like I mentioned before, Riser House is a full service publishing company. We have 9 songwriters, and it's my job. Essentially, I act as a manager, but for songwriters. difference between a publisher in LA and Nashville are very different. I know in LA, most songwriters have managers. That's what publishers are here in Nashville. So I'm booking all the sessions, pitching songs, just meeting with as many different other publishers in town as I can, brainstorming, and essentially just trying to make as much music happen as possible. But what I love to pride myself on at Riser House is we like to be very intentional with the sessions that we are booking, and we always want it to make sense for the writer or the artist that we're working with. We never want them to feel like a day was a waste of time, and always have an objective in the right to some larger goal. So majority of my day is spent living in our publishing roster. But when there are, like I mentioned, our artists in album cycles, things can get pretty busy on the A&R side as well.
Yeah. So as far as you said, you spend a lot of your day listening to pitches and also managing sessions for your songwriters. So you
Yes.
both receive the pitches and also sort of send out your artists, your songwriters to work with.
Yeah, I do
artists.
think that honestly gives me an advantage, because I then have trained my brain at least, and I've learned a lot from my boss Brandon on what he listens for when we're looking for an outside song for one of our artists, which I think in return makes me a better publisher, because I'm a publisher at heart. I love lyric driven songs that would make people cry and feel something. But being involved in the A&R side has made me realize that just because the song gives you goosebumps when you listen to it isn't always the best pitch for, say, a radio single. And so it definitely can sometimes be conflicting in my mind about what I think is great and then what another artist specifically needs. But music's music, is all subjective, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that must be really difficult. How so you mentioned you kind of have to turn off the preference
Well,
for
I'll
very
be like,
sentimental music or
yeah, like someone might us a pitch, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so good. Someone's like, grandma's dying in the song, and I'm crying in the corner. And
not the club banger.
no, and my boss is like, no, like, we don't need another sad ballad, like what?
Oh.
And those listening to this might agree with me, but I obviously am not a songwriter, but I do believe that it's harder to write just an up-tempo, down the middle hit than it is like a sad ballad, because you obviously are pulling from your feelings with the sad, emotional, moving songs, but with the down the middle, you're just trying to let people have a good time when they listen to it, and it's almost harder to get into that headspace because you're not pulling from anything that you've really experienced. You're just like pulling from a good time. So
That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. So you both review pitches and then also send your songwriters out to work with different artists. How do you
yes.
approach that? Are these relationships cultivated over time? Like, how do you kind of fit the songwriters with the right artists?
Yes, the relationship, especially in Nashville, is very much cultivated over time. Our songwriter, Dallas Wilson, is a great example of this. He writes a ton with Lainey Wilson. They're not related, but they just have last name. Dallas started writing with Lainey about 6 years ago, before she was a mega superstar. And I will say it's like a testament to his talent. He's also a great A&R. If he feels like someone is worth getting in the room with again at a baby artist stage, he'll let us know. And usually we've seen like that artist specifically have success.
Wow.
But it just goes way back from the time they first started writing together 6 years ago, when they were both baby artists, baby writer. Through that, we become really good friends with her manager. My boss, Brandon, and her manager are very close. And it's just a relationship that you just have to keep working. And I will say it's just as important for the writer to work that relationship as it is for the publisher or the manager to work that relationship on the business side as well. So my advice, at least to the writers, producers listening to this, if you write with an artist and you really want to write with them again, text them every other week just saying like, hey man, just saw you put out a song. I love it so much. Like, you're killing it. You don't need to ask for a date, but just staying present and intentional and honest will get you farther than any talent really ever will. And so that's a huge piece of advice for me. But yes, the relationships are cultivated over time, and I can only do 50% of the work. You know, I'm not there in the session helping write the song. I have to trust that my writer will bring his best that day. But you know, if that's not the case, like that's not the case, and you hope that someone will try anything twice, you know. But yes, it's a very, at least publishing is a very, very relationship business. And so just maintaining those relationships both on the business side, but then as a writer on the creative side as well, are extremely important.
I feel like that's encouraging because I think a lot of things in music are becoming sort of conveyor belt,
Yeah.
just mass produced AI beats,
Well,
all of
that's why
that.
like I love the publishing industry because it's still very relationship based, and Nashville especially is one big family, you know. It's obviously competitive, but you celebrate like all the wins together. And it's just, I forgot what I was saying here, but you just celebrate all the wins together, and there's no algorithm for it. You know, like that's the best part about it, because we do have a full service label at Riser House, and I do see the marketing strategy and the streaming strategy, and I'm like, oh no, that stinks. Like I'm gonna go, you know, like what we do doesn't have to be based on an algorithm, you know, at least like publishing and creating songs, which that's the magic of it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's so encouraging. Do you feel like so you mentioned that you do a lot of like radio pitching, especially more on the A&R side. Do you find with the shift to streaming digital, obviously this has been happening for a while, but do you find that is forcing you to kind of, sacrifice a little bit to fit the algorithm? Or do you
Yeah,
think you're
I
able
mean,
to say,
obviously, like you want to sit here and say like the best song wins, right? That's what everyone says. And I do, you know, there's a hopeless romantic in me that's like, yeah, that is true. There's songs that have been cut and they're like 15 years old and then they become a hit, you know? But those success stories are pretty few and far between, where, you know, there is like a little bit of politics to be played within the system of labels picking radio singles and whatnot. So definitely you have to be like adherent to that. But at the same time, that's not my department. And I just, you know, I let them do the best job that they can. But yeah, it's interesting. Radio is definitely more prevalent in Nashville than it is like in any other industry. And essentially the songs that they're looking for there are just like down the middle, mainstream. You turn it on your car, you want to roll the windows down, you know, like that's the vibe that it's going for. Um, and then as far as the streaming songs go, yeah, I don't know. It's interesting to see how it's playing out. You're definitely seeing less artists being taken to radio because of how expensive it is. But in return, like streaming is still not paying, in my opinion, songwriters enough. So hopefully there's a big change there, and everyone can make some more money off streaming. But until then, we hope for those radio
yeah.
number ones.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that with all the controversy around songwriters, and their portion of pay. I heard there were some changes. Are you optimistic
Yeah,
for that?
there were some changes made maybe like a year or so ago, which increase their pay a little bit, but not by much. I think it's just expecting. So country songwriters primarily make their money off radio number ones. In a 52-week year, last year there were 20 number ones. So that's 20 songs. Let's say each song had 3 writers on it. That's 60 songwriters in a town of thousands, you know? And so if you want to keep perpetuating music and getting the best quality songs, you have to monetarily reward the songwriters on the streaming side. And you are seeing a lot of artists now like a lot of independent artists will cut songwriters in on the master so that they can make a bit more money. But also is a huge benefit because that artist will probably get better writers in the room because they know that they can get points on the master.
Right.
So if any independent artists are out there listening to that, that's a huge bonus if you can afford to do it. And there was a couple artists who did that earlier this year in Nashville, and there was just a ton of respect from the community to them. Just how the way we know that streaming is paid out amongst songwriters.
Yeah, that's really encouraging to see the changes happening on the artist side. It's unfortunate it hasn't totally been mirrored by streaming companies.
Yeah.
What can you do? Yeah, exactly. So you keep on, you've mentioned a couple times about Nashville's ecosystem, and I always am looking at Nashville's bookings and, artists who are really popping off in Nashville. And I feel like confident, between San Francisco, LA, New York, things that do well in one will usually do pretty well in another. But Nashville, I feel like, is its own thing. Is that how you see it and experience it as well?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I've gone to LA a handful of times and New York a handful of times. Nashville's just and maybe it's just like the South, but it's just much more conducive to collaboration. And you are seeing a lot of like more LA people are moving here. LA writers are moving here, LA artists are coming to work here. And I think that's because they like our ecosystem so much. I would like to think that I just call it one big unhappy family, who we all still love each other. But yeah, Nashville's its own thing. I also think it's been existing for years and years and years, like since the days of Elvis Presley. And it kind of just became its own thing. And it really was like the town of the songwriter from the very beginning. There's an amazing documentary about the Bluebird Cafe. And I think it's called The Story of a Song. And it goes through like Nashville's publishing history. And you just realize that people were doing that. People would stand on the side of the Grand Ole Opry and wait for Elvis Presley to get off stage. The guy who wrote The Ghetto like handed him his lyrics and was like, you should record.
Wow.
And so I think we just are so blind to the fact that this is already like the foundation had already been established and that like family mentality had already been established. So I think Nashville just does what it can to protect that and just keep, maintain the friendship and the collaboration that comes with that, and just a lot of mutual respect. Yeah, it's just weird. It's its own little machine. And it's like, well, finally country music all of a sudden pops off and everyone wants to move to Nashville, and we're like, wait, we've been here for years. Hey, I'll take it.
Are you seeing, I was looking through your roster and, a lot of it is, country and great stuff, great songs. But then I noticed with the wildlife, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, it felt a little bit more fusion. And I was wondering if that's sort of reflective of the Nashville scene shifting a little bit.
Yeah, there's a massive kind of like underground alt pop scene here, but the wildlife actually came about is our colleague Allison, when she was in college, did a presentation on them in like a management class that she was in.
Whoa.
But also it's kind of just a testament to my company, Riser House, is we're not afraid to be genre bending, but we're also very inclined, I'm trying to find the right word. We're very knowledgeable about what we don't know. So if we do sign a band where maybe we don't have the best experience, like we'll bring on a consultant to come strategize with them. But we just believe in working with good music and good people, and we're fully believe that if you do that, like you will have success.
Yeah.
With that being said, like we don't want to go so far out, but it is cool to be able to give opportunity to music that's not just country. Wildlife's a great example. We have a guy named Stephen Day who's kind of like soul pop-ish. We have a girl, her name's Ash Reuter. She writes country, but her artist stuff is almost kind of like a Maggie Rogers-esque. But I think just believing in music and the artist and then being aware of what we don't know. So if we do need to call for help on some things, like we can do that. And that's also the beauty of an independent company, is we have the ability to work with anyone, and not everything has to be specifically under this roof.
That totally makes sense. I guess circling back, because I'd really love to go more into Riser House and also your background specifically. So since you were just talking about Riser House, I know you've worked at, a few different companies in the industry. And so you've already touched a little bit on this, but how would you describe Riser House and what sort of makes it different from other experiences
Yeah,
you've
so
been?
the other companies that I worked for were pretty much just strictly publishing companies, and all of those companies were songwriter owned. So it's something in Nashville, might happen in LA a bit too, like Julian Bonetta's company is a good example, but songwriters will, once they've hit a good level of success, they will then open publishing companies and then sign writers under them to help develop them. And so all the companies that I worked for before Riser House were strictly just like songwriter run companies, where my old job, I was working for a producer named Chris DiStefano, and he's the best, super talented. He's had, I think, 11 #1 songs. But he had written and produced a couple songs for Mitchell Tenpenny, who is signed to Riser House. And this is kind of like going back to like we're all one family, where my boss Brandon called me one day and was like, I mean, you already have worked on some of this Mitchell stuff with Chris. Like, would you ever want to come over here and work at Riser House? And it just kind of felt like a supernatural shift for me. Like literally the week I started, Mitchell had a song go #1 that I'd worked on when I was working for Chris. So it just was this kind of thing. But
Yeah.
I think what I love the most about Riser House is obviously the people who work here, and then just everyone is super smart and super driven, and they just love music so much, and they're not afraid to be boxed in. But kind of how I mentioned before is not being afraid to ask for help if we need it, if it's outside of a genre or anything like that. But also Riser House is just such a great place. It really gives, at least it's given me the resources and the freedom to sign people, to develop talent. Obviously, I didn't want to say like no questions asked, because there's always questions asked, but there's just a huge belief in the people that work here. And at my other companies I worked at, They were very, very small teams, like just a couple people. We're here at Riser House. I think we have about 19 people who work at the company. So it's just a perfect size of a perfect little melting pot, I guess you could say.
And the good example again about how it's the relationships
Yeah,
that
that's the
usually
thing.
move you forward in music.
No, and even it's just crazy. Even like I'll see my old bosses at the BMI Awards every year, and Chris is now like cutting some vocals on Mitchell even to this day, and it's literally the smallest world ever. So again, like you never want to burn any bridges in this town, because
Yeah.
it'll always come back around, literally always.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I see that, in the San Francisco market as well, but I'm sure Nashville, it's just that much tighter. So
Yeah.
in your background, I saw that you were creative director before, and you also studied music business and your history. So it sounds like this working in music has been a long goal, a long thing that you've been invested in. Sort of can you tell us a little bit about the history? Did you envision publishing an A&R for yourself, or did the blocks just fall into place?
Yeah, so this is actually crazy because I went to the University of Georgia, and we just had a University of Georgia music business happy hour last week. And this was like 10 years ago at this point since I graduated college, but my old professor was there, and we were just kind of reminiscing on this exact story. But I went to the University of Georgia, and they do have a music business program there. It's not a major, it's like a certificate, so it's in between a major and a minor, but it's super intentional. It's only 100 people. And I think I just was like honestly a young idiot, and I was like, oh yeah, music, this like sounds so cool. Like I grew up, my mom put me in violin when I was younger, and I took lessons and I took piano lessons. And I've always loved music. My mom has a baby book where we would write what we want to do when we grow up. And I was like obsessed with John Mayer at the time. And I was like, I was like, I want to edit John Mayer's lyrics. That's what I thought. Like, I was like, yeah, because John Mayer
Wow.
would let me do that. But with that, so I
Close
think
though.
it kind of always just in my brain to work in music somehow. I just didn't know what that would be like. And then I went to college and I did the music business program, and they teach you kind of a little bit about everything. And I remember we got to the publishing section, and I was like, I don't want to do this, because all it was copyright law, contracts, which no one ever told me there was a creative side to publishing. And my sister was at Vanderbilt at the time in Nashville. And so I was like, I'm going to move to Nashville. Like, I have family there. Like, I'm just going to move to Nashville. And I was coming up to graduate, and my professor, the one I literally had just seen recently, was like, I think you should be a publisher. And I was like, no, I don't. I
No.
hated the contract section. And he's like, just trust me. Like, Nashville's a songwriter town. You should be a publisher. And he's like, I'm introducing you to Dallas Davidson, who is a mega 25 song #1 writer, BMI Songwriter of the Year. He had a publishing company, Play It Again, and he's a massive Georgia fan. So like anyone from Georgia, he always like connects with. And so my professor introed me to Dallas, and then Dallas hired me on as like the creative manager of his publishing company. And it's just, that's literally, I was just told that I should be a publisher. And at that point, when I was like 22, I was pretty much willing to do anything in the business. But for some reason, my like professor saw this in me, and he connected me with Dallas. And then I essentially just never looked back. And 10 years later, here I am. But it's crazy. So a little bit of both. Like, I think I'd always had a feeling for music, but I think it was a lot of fate and luck that got me into publishing, but a lot of hard work and luck that helped me stay with it for sure.
I love hearing stories like that. I mean, you're
Yeah,
like pretty much, I mean, not John Mayer, but you are like
no.
basically doing what
But
you
because I have
wanted.
friends who were like, I was like trading mixtapes on MySpace and connecting with all these artists, and I was like, okay, yeah, that wasn't me, like
Right.
I had a normal childhood. You know what I mean? But just very fortunate that I got that first introduction at a young age, and it's just been so great ever since.
Yeah. I'm curious because you said it's been a lot of hard work, obviously, of course, and it seems like a lot of like great opportunities came because of the work you put in. But I'm curious, what would you say are the most in case, thus far, a lot of what you've said is like, hell yeah, I want to be a publisher. This is awesome. This sounds amazing. What would you say are some of the hardest parts of being in publishing?
You're getting told no multiple times a day. The
Mm.
When you pitch a song, the odds of it getting cut, an outside song, are extremely slim. So you do have to have like a lot of thick skin, and know that and like just get back up and try again. The best publishers are the ones that just get back up and try again. So yeah, I think the hardest part for sure is just the amount of rejection that you do get. But with that being said, it makes the wins like that much bigger
Mm.
and that much more powerful, which is why I think you stay in it. I remember when I was working for Chris, it was like during COVID, and I was just like feeling so run down. Just I wasn't feeling inspired. The songs like weren't speaking to me like they normally do, and I was just like, ugh. And I think when I look back at it, it's just because I hadn't had a win in a while, and then like all of a sudden I got it, and I was like, oh my god, I love it. I love publishing. So I do think that the like intense, like you're always getting rejected, always.
Yeah.
So I think for people who that bothers a lot, and maybe being a publisher isn't for them, but like what part of the music business isn't about rejection? You know what I mean? Like that's
True.
it's like we have to have thick skin, and we have to realize that just because maybe they didn't like our songs that day doesn't mean that someone else isn't going to, you know.
So true.
And
Yeah.
then also I think like there's so much talent out there, and I think also just yeah, dealing with the politics, like sometimes you'll lose out on deals because we can't offer this or someone else offered that, and especially being at an independent company, like we can't write the check size of the majors. So like sometimes you'll have to like let go of people that you really invested a lot of time in just because maybe it's not the right fit. Like I said, it just is rejection, but I will say publishing is I'm very emotionally tied to it as well because you are like working with these relationships that you've made for years, and you spend so much time investing in your writers and maybe writers that you want to sign that it can be heartbreaking when something doesn't work out. But at the same time, like the beauty of publishing is that just because maybe you don't specifically work with that person, maybe they're not on your roster, doesn't mean that you can't still work with them, right? Your writers can still write with them. You can still put your artists with them. So there's a lot of different ways to work with people, but I think the losses are felt more and the rejection is constant. Those are probably
Mhm.
the two hardest things about publishing for me.
Yeah, I feel like that constant rejection aspect of the music industry though is sort of what has is encouraging because I feel like that's what retains some of the heart and what you were saying, the relational aspect. Like
Mhm.
you can come with the most beautiful AI generated song or whatever horror, man-made horror that is
Yeah,
of this era, but it is so relational that the door only opens if it's like backed by a lot of like passion and persistence. So
no, 100%.
encouraging.
Yeah,
Mm.
100%. It also sucks, like, having to be the bad guy, when you're like, "This song's just not that good," because anyone who writes the song doesn't think that, you know? And sometimes you have to be the one that's just like, this isn't it." But
Have you found your own music tastes? I know I talk to a lot of like sound engineers and producers who are like after working with clients, like music, I can't enjoy music. It's like corrupted. I'm constantly running. I wonder if it's the same for you.
yeah, I feel like
Mm.
before I started working in music, I was like the music girl. Like I made all the playlists for everything. Everyone was always asking me for music. I literally just don't do that anymore. Like I listen to music when I'm working out, and then other than that, it's pretty much the music I work with, or I do listen to the radio or like Sirius XM because it makes me a better publisher to know like what's being played out there.
Mm.
And what people are gravitating towards. And yeah, I do say, like, I honestly wish that I kept up a bit more with just like how much music is being put out there across all genres, but if I'm being honest, I just don't do it. Like I obviously know the big stuff. Like I know I listen to the Bieber album, but
Mm.
um yeah, it's kind of a bummer. But it's okay. It's a good bummer.
I
And I
think it's
feel
good.
like I'm too critical now, I'm like,
Yeah.
look at this song, blah blah blah. Also just don't have
I
the
think it's
time. Like, when am I gonna have the time to go, like, listen to a whole thing unless I'm in my car?
Mhm.
But yeah.
I think there's merit to that. Like it keeps you objective, you know. I
Yeah,
talked to some
the
venues who are
producer
like, yeah.
the producer I worked with before Riser House,
Mhm.
Chris, he was like, "I only listen to, like, EDM because he doesn't want anything to get into his head that he could potentially sample without knowing that he did it." He's like, "If I listen to mainstream music, like, he's a genius. He's like, I just could see a world in which I hear something and I like put it in production and I didn't mean to and I don't
Oh.
even know where it came from." So he was like, I only listen to like EDM music because there's like so much going on at one time that he's like not gonna like pull specific
Uh-huh.
things from it. It's actually very interesting, but he's on another level. I don't listen to music like that, but
Yeah,
yeah. I've definitely gotten from working in country, I've definitely gotten, like, a lot more into country music. But that just, like, comes with the job too, but even now, like, as a fan, that's kinda what I gravitate towards for sure.
that totally makes sense. Nashville's about that, so that makes sense. I know we just talked about the struggles of the job, and you mentioned that the toil is what makes the songs that do get through, that do get cut, that much better. Are there any high highs from your career thus far that you can kind of inspire folks with?
Yeah, I mean, I think anytime that a song goes number 1 is amazing. My songwriter, Dallas Wilson, had "Heart Like a Truck," the Lainey Wilson song, um
Rad.
last year go number 1 or 2 years ago, which that was just like a massive song. You'd be cooking in your kitchen and you'd hear it played on the Ford commercial on the television.
Wow.
So just being able to, you know, represent someone who like and celebrate those wins together. And like I mentioned, he was writing with her way before my time, and it wasn't me that introduced them, but just to see that relationship come to such fruition is so amazing. Um, there's a couple. He had a number one with Dylan Scott as well, who, like, one of my best friends is his A&R. So it's just, again, like, super fun to win with the people you love and the people who you consider like your family away from family. And I mean, honestly, like from day to day, the little wins are just getting a yes on a right that you've been chasing down for a while, or finally locking in a date with an artist that never has any dates because they're so busy. Um, Getting a song turned in that you love, like those things happen every single day. And I think I take them for granted because they are just part of my daily life. But then when I talk about them, I'm like, okay, that's awesome. Like being able to play with people's creativity and having just like the smallest part in the creation of something that lives forever. Like that to me is just the absolute magic of publishing. And that's the best win of them all. Like knowing that if these three people who got in a room today and wrote a song because you scheduled it and they created something that is now going to live forever, is going to impact people's lives, and people are going to listen to it and feel some type of way, and like you orchestrated that, that's like the best feeling in the world.
That is super well said. I mean, you outlining the number one, the sort of the stats behind getting a number one track. I feel like I was reading that in your bio and it didn't fully sink in. Where I'm like, she has like multiple number ones.
Oh, yeah, no,
under
there's
her
like
tenure, and that's wild. Like I you read stuff like that in music, and you don't really calculate that is that is very, very small group of people who can have
But
that.
also, like, no one person can take credit for anything, like each songwriter has a publisher attached to them. Each songwriter has a team of people attached to them. And that's kind of where I come back to like the Nashville family, where it's like a number one song, like you can't ever just credit like one person with a number one song, right? Like we've all played a massive part in it, and it's like, oh well, who pitched it? And then you come find out like all of us sent it to the same all of us sent the song to the same person. But it's just awesome to be a part of what people hear and what makes people feel something, and you hope that they feel something because that's like what music is, and to be able to work with the writers that can articulate that so well is just, it's awesome. There's, like I said, like there's just no feeling like it.
Well, on that note, I just want to end on, are there any releases, songs, cuts, all of that good stuff coming up that people can keep their eyes peeled for? Any upcoming number ones we can be ahead on?
Go listen to Lainey Wilson's deluxe album when it comes out. I think it's August 15th. We'll have we have like 6 songs on the project, but then we have I think 4 or 5 more coming out on the deluxe. So go check those out. They're amazing, I think. Dylan Carmichael, he just put out a new record. If you want to listen to some good old country music, go check that out.
We do.
We got a girl, Ash Rooter. She's putting out a song at the end of August. You guys go check it out. She's amazing. Mitchell's got a record out, came out last year. Everyone go listen to everything, please. Lainey Gardner, there's a song called Boot Down coming out on her project. Go listen to it. I don't know. Half the time, like you'll see that you got a cut on like social media and you're like, oh my God, I had no idea that was coming out. So
yeah, you just need to have a lot to keep track of.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Sometimes our like our digital people here at Riser House are like, why didn't you tell us this was coming out? We're like, we had no idea. We literally didn't know. So artists, tell your people that your songs are coming out so we can post about it. But yes, go listen to country music, everyone, or not. Listen to whatever makes you happy.
I think you're gonna convert some people. We're gonna make San
Yeah.
Francisco the new
New
stronghold
fans.
for country music. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kirby. This has been super awesome, super helpful information. I'm learning all about publishing. And everyone check out Riser House and keep up with all the songs coming up under Kirby's roster.
Yes, thank you guys so much. Hope you learned something. If anyone's listening to this have any questions, hit me up. Happy to help in any way that I can. But thank you so much. This was great.
Think about you were in the front seat running the station. Turn it up and keep that subwoofer shaking. 17 Saturday night education. A couple hearts we didn't know we were breaking. Still taking them back road turns we were taking. I think about all the time that we wasted. But here I am every night still chasing